Hi guys, it's Peter at Peter's Blooms. If you're like me, you like to watch YouTube videos, particularly about orchids and orchid care. So I was wondering what was one of the most viewed orchid care videos on YouTube. And I came across one from Happiness Gardens called Miraculous for Reviving Rotten Orchids Immediately. Unfortunately for me, I have some rotten orchids, and I love to revive them miraculously and immediately. So let's check out the video. So it starts with a welcome screen, and then they show their rotten orchid. It has a lot of dead leaves, and they start pulling them apart, and then they start to take it out of the pot. And you can see it's in sorghum moss, and so basically they start ripping out all of the dead moss, or all the rotten moss, taking out the roots, and then breaking it down. So we'll have to see if our orchids have the same issue and if they have any live roots. In this case, they find a few live roots, and so that's where they start with their method. So let's see what's going on with our orchids, and let's pause the video here and see what we got. Okay, those were our beautiful plants, and here are the ones that are rotten. This one seems to be more similar to the one he had, all these dead leaves on top, also a stem. And then this one I think just got water in the ground and the leaves rotted. So let's start with this one. Same thing he did, pull it apart. This one is pretty dry. Break this up a little. Yeah, the roots are dry. Let's see if anything is living. Probably one here. Let's see, not as many green roots as they had in the video, but some of them feel like they're not completely dried out. This thing just broke, so I think there's a few, but maybe not as long as they had in the video. That's that one. I'm gonna wash my hands and then take that one apart. Okay, so here's the other one. I think this just got lost and kind of got dried out through neglect. This one is more recent. Actually, the sorghum moss is still damp on this one, so it just maybe got overwatered and also got water in the crown. So yeah, this one's pretty wet. Also has the, let's see where it started out with this size, and then they moved it up, wrapped it up in more moss, and moved it up to a bigger pot. So this is pretty much completely different than the other one. But we'll see, this miraculous method works. Okay, I think that's cleaned up. I'll get rid of this moss and still work on them separately. I don't need these anymore. But let's go on to the next step. So after they take it apart, they start snipping away all of the dead roots, pulling it apart, and we'll have to see if that's the case for ours. I won't run through all of this in this video. So they start snipping it apart, and then we'll see what we end up with. All right, so I got rid of all the moss and changed out the paper. And now we are going to start snipping. So heat up my scissors. And start with the dry one. So get rid of this stem.
We cut the stem a few times, probably to get to where it was starting to get moist. Oops, still pretty dry. Get rid of this spike. Keep going. That's a little bit moist. And now, get rid of all these roots. Okay, that's what's left on that one. I'm gonna wash my hands again. And then get ready for this one. Okay, I'm back. I just washed my hands just to make sure there's nothing on my hands that will transfer between the orchids. And we have to flame the scissors again. I mean, I don't know that there were any viruses on these things or any mold. I think they just either weren't watered or watered too much. So I'll start again with this one. Yeah, this top is pretty much gone. It's still dry. Still don't feel that moist, but I don't want to go too low. And then just cut all these ones with just strings. Thought this one would have more green leaves, green roots, but don't feel too many. So I don't want to cut it all, but we'll see what happens. Not too encouraging in terms of live roots, but let's see what happens. All right, let's see the next step.
Okay, so we've cleaned ours up, and then they take a candle, light it, an orange candle, and start dripping the wax. They call it molten candle, but start dripping the wax onto the major cuts to try to seal them up. So fortunately, I have an orange candle as well, and let's do that step next.
Okay, so I have my candle to seal off those. It's a bit breezy, so let's see if this thing works. Maybe not. Some onyx. Starting to burn the orchid. That's not working. See if I can get it to drip properly. Okay, now it's working. Definitely a weird method for this. I think this part worked. I'm not sure about the rest. But let's move on to the next step.
Then they cut to some of their other orchids and they start making the secret material that's going to revive these orchids. So that is a couple spoons of cinnamon into a jar, heaping spoonfuls, I guess. And they pour in boiling water. They say it's a liter, and so this is into this jar they have. Fortunately, they don't seem to burn themselves, so that's good. So they let it cool down, and so let's move on to that step. So let's try this part. Got this actually new cinnamon. I just opened it. Get it. My spoon is a bit different than theirs, but I'll just try to figure it out. 2 spoons. 1, 2. And then the liter of boiling water. So I already prepared this. Of course, this is a pickle jar, so it can handle the heat. Then they just closed it up. Wasn't quite sure if they stirred it, but then they let it cool. So let's go ahead and do that, let it cool, and then move on to the next step. Then after it's cooled down, they take the solution, essentially a cinnamon tea, and they strain it through a strainer and a cloth to remove all the particles. They continue to strain out the tea, and let's see what they do next. Okay, so the tea is cooled off, and now it's time to strain it. So let's open it up. Our strainer and our cloth. Just like they showed in the video. In the video, they had some crowing roosters at this point, so I'll try to add those in as a sound effect. Pour this through. And let that filter through. So they put the orchid in a small plastic container and they fill it up with the cinnamon tea. Let it sit. They say they let it sit for 30 minutes. Meanwhile, they take the remaining tea and put it into a squirt bottle and spray their orchids with that. I'm not going to do that step, so we can skip this part.
Okay, we have our cinnamon tea and we have our cleaned up orchid roots. And now it's time for the miraculous step of treating the orchid roots. I have this container and I have this container. This root still feels very soft, so I'm not too encouraged by that. So pour this in. And pour this one in, oops, and upside down. Hopefully the wax sealing the cuts is good enough. A lot of times people just put cinnamon itself on the cut areas, but we'll see how this one goes. Okay. And this sits for 30 minutes. Again, he did pour this into a squirt bottle and sprayed his orchids. Not going to do that step. I don't think it's part of the miracle cure for these roots. Great, so let's come back in 30 minutes.
Now they're taking the orchid out of the tea, the orchid roots, and they're proceeding to pot it in a basket, putting in some rocks and then a bark media, just filling it up to the top with the sealed stem exposed. And then they top that off with some, looks like some dry sorghum moss. And it says they let it sit for 7 days in a cool place. Apparently they don't water it during those 7 days. Let's move on to the next step.
Okay, it's been 30 minutes and now it's time to pot them up. They look like they're hydrated, and I have these two baskets. I'm using this orchid, Phalaenopsis orchid bark that I got at Home Depot, and also some lava rocks, so to fill in the bottom. I think that's somewhat similar to what he had. The bark, the very top, it's kind of like cereal. The big chunks are at the top, so I did mix it up. It has bark, some charcoal, and some perlite, I think. Maybe some peat moss. But I did dig it around. I didn't want to put the huge pieces with these little orchids. So let's get going. So I'm using the bottom just for drainage. I may throw some in with the mix too. And then set this. He had the stem. Obviously, the stem was out of the media. So I'll put some media in the bottom. Set this on top. Some of the littler rocks, just to help with the drainage. Make sure it's good to have some inorganic mix just to keep things loose. Not pack it in too tightly, but make sure it should be a little taller. So I'm more encouraged by this one. It was dry, I think, mostly, and Phalaenopsis orchids can stand, if they're established, can take being dry for a little while. I'm not sure it was exactly rotting, but in terms of mold or something like that. So that looks okay. Now let's try this one. This one is almost nothing left. So this one is going to be over potted for sure. So let's put some more bark. The roots at least can get through it. So yeah, Phalaenopsis, if you overwater them and get water in the top, they kind of dissolve, which may be the case for this one. I don't know if this miraculous method will work for this one. So, but we'll see. So yes, these are the two. Then he used, he had sorghum moss on the top, dry. I'm not sure. Usually you want to hydrate the moss a little bit. I have this again from Home Depot. That will try to follow his miraculous method. And then he didn't water it for 7 days. So let's move on to the next step. So this is where I set him up. It's in our backyard, has a northern exposure, so they do get a fair amount of sun, and it should be protected from the rain. But this is February in South Florida. Not exactly cool, so we'll see how they do.
Then after 7 days, they spray it down with a squirt bottle and then have some kind of bottom of a water container or something that has holes in it that's cut, and they put that over the top. And they let that sit. So it's been 7 days since we potted these up, and they've been sitting in well-lit place. It's been fairly warm, maybe up to the mid-80s, so it's not exactly cool, and they feel a bit dry, so hopefully they still survived. I think this was the bigger one. I think the roots are still there. Maybe a bit dry. The smaller one, not so sure. It's pretty loose. So I'll definitely water these, as I mentioned in the video, maybe a little bit more than what they showed, which is maybe just a few squirts in the video. So, but you get around the pot too. And then we'll, as they showed, we'll cover them up. Let's just get this sorghum moss wet. The roots are not reaching the bottom by any means, but try to get them with enough moisture to last. And then I think it's five days of watering after that. I just dropped my water bottle. Okay, that's the step. Okay, now I have this water jug that I cut open and have cut some holes in the top, and I'll just put it over the top of this for both of them. I'll probably just put a rock on top in case it gets windy, and see, make sure it's secure. So that's that step, and then in 5 days we water it again, keep watering it. So after 3 weeks, they notice some kind of a growth. So let's see if our orchids have any kind of growth. And here are the orchids. As I mentioned, they had been dipped in the cinnamon tea and were planted and sat for a week and then were watered. The instructions really didn't say what to do in terms of watering after that, but I did water them every 7 days. And now it's 3 weeks after we started, and let's check and see if any sprouts have started to show up. So this one, this is the first one. I think this is the one with the bigger roots. Nothing showing up yet. We'll have to check if these roots are still even alive. As I mentioned, it was quite warm the first week. Then we had some cooler weather. They seem to be pretty small, pretty shriveled, I mean. Hard to say. I'm not going to dig them out, but that one has some body to it. But in terms of anything sprouting, really don't see anything green. Maybe most of what I see is the wax. So nothing happening on that one yet. And then this was the other one that had a lot of root rot. And if anything, it looks worse. It's very, very loose
I'm not encouraged about that one at all. Yeah, things are pretty much, even the moss is kind of greenish. So we'll continue with the study, but so far nothing miraculous has happened as it did in their video.
And they proceed to water it every 5 days. And then let's see what happens next. We'll do that. Then after 2 months, they take the lid off and they have an orchid with leaves, I guess around 5 leaves, decent looking roots. So that's their revival technique, soaking in cinnamon tea and keeping the orchid moist. Looks pretty good. So let's see what happened with ours. Okay, so here we have the orchids after 2 months, and let's take a look. Just like at around 3 weeks, no immediate miracles have happened, either at 3 weeks or at 2 months. But let's take a little bit of a closer look. This is the one that had the smaller roots, and let's see what happened. Well, essentially, it's just a dried up version of what I had planted. I don't see any growth, and everything at this point is completely dry. Let's check the larger one. Now this one had green roots when I planted it. I mean, I didn't really expect much from this one. It had both crown and root rot, but this one had green roots and a fairly large crown. And I noticed a couple weeks ago when watering it, some of the roots were still quite firm. So I was encouraged that it might still be growing, but it too is now completely dry. And no sign of any kind of sprout. In fact, there might be a worm or something on it. So this miracle method didn't really work for me. That's pretty disappointing, but really not unexpected. There's many videos from different YouTube content creators, including Miss Orchid Girl, that I have linked in the description below, that show that roots themselves are not enough to regenerate orchids. Essentially, to regenerate an orchid that's lost its leaves, you either need to have a baby orchid growing on the flower spike, known as a keiki, or you need to have a basal growth out of the stem, essentially a basal keiki, that then is able to reform the plant. In most cases, the keikis really only form on healthy plants, not on things that have already lost their leaves. And in many cases, the basal keikis don't form very often. So I don't know if Happiness Garden had a basal keiki on their root, but it certainly didn't work for me. And you can use other products, root hormones, like keiki paste, to promote the growth of keikis, but cinnamon tea won't have that function, not at all. So I'd say this method is a failure. So what do you do if your Phalaenopsis orchids keep losing all of their leaves? That's usually due to one of two things, either overwatering leading to root rot, or getting water in the wrong place, the crown, leading to crown and stem rot. So being careful with that is a good place to start. In any case, this miracle method didn't work for me, but I'm still waiting on another miracle to see if this video gets 11 million views in the next 2 years. Thanks for watching.